today we are having a conversation about something that's on a lot of our minds right now. And that's really like, how do we stay connected to ourselves through the holiday season, through challenges, through things that are shifting and unknown? And before we dive in, I just want to acknowledge that this November, both Stella and I have been exploring this same question with our communities and just in different ways. And so I do it through holding space in women's circles, places to come and simply be, to just exhale, to witness and be witnessed, and space to allow yourself to be in the company of other women who are also doing the same, who can relate to you and hear you and hold space for you to be human. So that's really what the women's circles are all about. And then also Stella does this work through the Well Systems Institute, where she helps women listen to what their bodies are telling them, teaching practical tools and frameworks for staying centered, especially when everything else around us feels maybe a little chaotic. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to dive in. And uh, Stella, if you could, in your own words, like just briefly introduce yourself, the work that you do with the Well Systems Institute, kind of like what it is, and then and how you help women. So, yeah.
Sure, thank you. And it was so fun just kind of like sitting here and laughing at all the technical gremlins that are happening. And ultimately, the link that we all set up doesn't actually work. And it's just really, it's really funny. And I think it really links to our conversation today because there's so many women that try to do everything so right. And no matter what you do, you end up in this position where things just don't work out the way that you think that they should. And so it's like, what do you now do with that information? So I found it so the universe provides exactly like what's needed for the moment. And so I was just sitting here sipping my tea and enjoying, like waiting for us to be live. So, and it's perfect, right? Like it's perfect in its imperfection. So, all right. So I'm Stella Murrizi and I'm the creative director of the Well Systems Institute. So the Well Systems Institute has been helping women for over 30 years, women who've really done a lot of work on themselves. And it helps them come back to themselves. So when something's missing, there's something you've tried yoga, you've tried meditations, all the things that I had tried, for example. And then ultimately, some women need a framework to understand and to be able to relax into their experience so that they can unpack it. So the Well Systems Institute, the body of knowledge that was created by Louise Lebren, provides that framework. So it is this incredible body of knowledge. It's both somehow linear in its trajectory of discovering who you have been, staying in the moment that you're in, and choosing who you're becoming. And it shows you that systematically. So it's been a very eye-opening experience for me, and it's kind of like linked everything together. So now, of course, I've devoted my life to it. So,
I love it. I love it. And I think, yeah, it, like you said, it's so nice to be able to just like have because to dive into and to know what questions to ask, even of yourself, or where to get curious. Um, and so I guess kind of before we get into like the tools, techniques, frameworks, all of that, um, I wanted to start with just when women come to you during this holiday season, um, what do you see women are experiencing? Like, what are the patterns that you see over and over?
hmm. So I guess the women that I work with predominantly are the caretakers in the family systems. So they're the ones that, will do the gathering and they'll set the table and they'll buy the food and they'll do the plans and they'll do all this stuff. And so frequently what shows up is overwhelm. So there's a lot of women in that state of overwhelm trying to do this thing, trying to catch up, trying to do it right, like we were doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's always hiccups. So I don't know if you read in my last newsletter, but I showcase that there's 89% of people struggle during the holiday season. So that's 9 out of 10 people struggle. And the people that struggle the most are the ones that have a particular view of how things should be And when things don't go exactly that way, then they don't know what to do with themselves and they don't know how to handle the situation. And so they go into overdrive and they go into panic and they go into anxiety and or depression or all of the above. And so that's mostly what I'm seeing right now. It's that like panic to get it right.
Yeah, yeah. And oh my gosh, it's so cool because yeah, like those moments where you're I think that's when like all this stuff comes up. It's like the times when you want to blame someone else for why this is happening, or the times when you're like, I just want to react like and so yeah, like how do we choose differently when we're like in the moment, in the thick of it? But then also, what I keep telling everybody about this because I just think so beautiful about how you talk about triggers and how in the moment when you feel like that heat and that trigger coming up, recognizing it not as a problem, but as an invitation. And this invitation to notice, to be aware, like what is my inner dialogue? What is happening? Like how am I feeling? And um using that as an invitation that holds information for us. And so, if you could explain more about that concept and that topic, I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you for the chance to do that because it's actually really important. And there's a lot of different things that interconnect, a lot of different truths that interconnect that make what you just said a reality. And people need to experience that in their own nervous system to trust that it's true.
Mm.
And so it takes a little bit of practice sometimes to actually do that. But essentially, and Eastern philosophies and modern science is catching up, particularly with Nassim Haramein's work. Our body is a quantum biological processing device. So, what that means is that it's processing information. Information might be something like a signal. So, signal from self, signal from the life force that I am, moves through and informs this body, hey, there's something going on here. Pay attention. In the moment that that signal interacts with the other signals of what I call cultural conditioning, so the signals of programming or what a good girl should or what a good mother would or, all that sort of stuff. When those signals clash, our bodies respond because our bodies are designed specifically to respond to that moment of those signals clashing. And you and I are taught to call that a trigger and to label it a bad thing and to try to shut it down and to try to dismiss it and deny it and defend it and just like don't face it. It's a bad thing. Make it go away.
Yeah.
But it's not, right? It's a wonderful thing. It's a magnificent thing. It's a moment of, hey, you pay attention because you're not in this moment in alignment with the truth of who you are. So pay attention.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
when we start to think of triggers in that way, they become a gift. Like they're really a gift for us to welcome and unpack. But the trick is knowing how to do that. And most people don't know how to do that.
Right, right. And I think that that it's sometimes I don't know. Tell me if this is a good analogy or not. But sometimes I think about it as like when you're on a road and you get like the road bumps. Like you hit the things on the side of the road that are like that, and then like, oh, I need to pivot. Like, oh, this is telling me, like, this is guidance. Okay. Um, but yeah, and just I think even noticing some of our body cues and how we can use that as information. Even now, like before we started, like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting hot and flustered and just to breathe and be in my body and to get oxygen back into my brain so I can think more clearly. Um, so yeah, I think yeah, what does it actually mean to listen to your body and how can we do that, you know? And you talk about that in this four-step process. So maybe if you want to go into that a little bit, like the name it, claim it, choose it, change it. And if you'd like to walk us through that.
Sure. So what was happening here is that there was a 20-minute delay between where we were supposed to be and where we ended up.
Yeah.
And that's enough time for anybody to go, oh my God, is this going to happen? What's happening? All that sort of stuff. So you just said that your body was hot, right? The heat in your body is information around your capacity to create that which you want, to transform and transcend the perceptual limitation that we'll call technology in this case, right? Like the technology was just not complying, man. And so the response in the body is a heat response, which makes a lot of sense to me from a code model perspective because heat in the body lets you know that something needs to transform here. It's an action oriented energy.
Mm, mhm,
So if you were to name that energy, you called it frustration, right? So, like, that's one thing to call it, and it makes a lot of sense because in the frustration, you're not getting the outcome that you think you should have at this point in time,
mhm.
right? So, but then you went into, okay, well, inhale, breathe, right? So that you can actually be present in the moment and just allow it to unfold, right? Just allow it to unfold. And that's you claiming it, right? In that moment, you're choosing, this is what's happening right now, and I'm going to claim it for myself so that I choose. And you could have chosen to just pull the plug,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
You could have chosen, like, this is not going to happen today, and we can move on. I could have done the same thing, right? And in that choice, we created this reality where we're here actually having this conversation now.
that's so
Right,
cool.
because it's so simple and it's so profound and it's so impactful, and it's like the things that people are conditioned to call small things are exactly where you practice this, and then you can actually know it to be true in your nervous system. Because if it's not true in your nervous system, it's just some people yapping about it and, "Oh, that sounds nice," and moving on.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
totally do. I know. And I think that's what's so powerful about that, like, reclaiming of just such a very simple thing of reclaiming these ideas and thoughts like, "No, I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna," instead of ignoring or giving up or, um, blaming someone else or,
Mhm, mhm.
or even yeah, um, and I
Which are all options, by the way.
which are all
Not very effective,
yeah, which are
you
all
know?
and which are all I think that we've done in the past. And so I think that that is um it's kind of cool to see those trigger points and instead of being like, "Oh my gosh, this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't feel upset or overwhelmed." It's like, "Oh, I'm growing. I'm expanding. I'm doing something different. I'm moving into a space that's new. I'm learning new things." And so I think it's also where when we can really um start to notice those things, then we can almost like this is so weird, but you can almost get excited that you're
So let's give ourselves permission to say that you do get excited, right? It's exciting. It's exciting to be here, and that's the language of the universe that says you're in the right path,
yeah,
right? Like keep following that path. You're in the right path, and never ever does it work out the way that we think that it should. Never,
right,
right?
right.
Because it's new. You don't know. You don't know.
You don't know. And okay, so yeah, so then let's say with the framework that you teach, if you want to kind of like go through each one, um, the name it, claim it, choose it, and change it, and kind of walk us through what that means.
hmm So that's what I'll be doing in the upcoming workshop at
Okay.
the end of this month.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it'll be a much more in detail kind of space and then followed with coaching. So it's the only time that I provide coaching um, at that kind of rate and space. But essentially, I've realized recently that there's different frameworks that combine that teach the well systems way of navigating the world. So that might not mean much to someone that's new, that's fine. But the point is that this is one of the processes that you can actually engage for yourself and be mindful of for yourself. So naming it is essential because if you don't name the thing, then it does not exist in your reality. Right. So if, for example, your frustration in this, as we were setting up the tech, I was just waiting, chilling, drinking my tea. But as you guys were working really hard to set up the technology, had you not stayed with what's actually showing up for you and named it as important for you, for example, right? Like this is happening, this is how I feel, but it's important to me. Had you not done that, everything else would be moot. Moot, is that the word? Whatever. None of it would matter because there's no point to continuing on. So it's in the moment that we're in, and we can look around. I wrote about this recently where I was, about to start a fight with my father, right? Because he's opinionated and so am I, and sometimes we clash. And so I noticed that moment and I paused. I intentionally paused, which is really hard to do. But that's part of the naming it process is that pause. It's a 30-second pause. And in that pause, you get to look at your reality for what it is in that moment. And you get to intentionally pay attention for things that you wouldn't be paying attention to if you were in your story about what's going on. And, I should respond and I should set the record straight and all that stuff that would be running through. So in the process of actually staying with it and noticing, I got to choose, right? I got to claim that what's going on here before we go to choosing, but that too is a choice. Um, to stay in the moment that I'm in, to see it for what it is, and to claim what's mine. This drive to respond, to make him wrong, this compulsion is mine. It has nothing to do with him. And I can choose in this moment to express the compulsion. No, you're wrong. And yes, I'm right. And let's duke it out till midnight. That rhymed. Or I could stay with it and notice that this is mine and what's important to me. So this is me now claiming what's important to me. And what's important to me is that I have a good time with my family. So the choice comes in. So what do I now choose? Well, I mindfully and intentionally choose to breathe, to keep my attention inside my body at the base of my spine so that I'm rooted in reality in the here and now in my body. And I choose to let it go. Who said that? Right? But I choose intentionally to let it go. And in that process, the outcome is a different outcome than would have been had I not. And I prefer the one that I actually chose. And that's how that reality changed for me in that moment. So by staying with this process, I ended up creating something that was meaningful for everybody, right? I did not send my dad off at, midnight. I don't want to stay here and I'm going to fight you or whatever would have happened. Who knows? But the familiar thing, we all know the familiar thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that it's so I just was in a women's circle with um before this call, and that was something that resonated. I think several people brought it up of letting go. Just letting go of some of our expectations that we have around the holidays, that we have
Mhm.
for ourselves, that we have for other people. Just some of those things that if we just let them go, we would feel so much better. But it's so, for whatever reason, there's something that we just want to cling to and that need to
So
eat or need to, whatever. Yeah.
I'd like to speak to that just for a moment because the energy of letting go is quite literally the hardest energy. It's like you've given birth twice, so you already know. It's that, like, you have to be willing to let go because if you're contracting, you can't give birth, right? But it's the hardest part, isn't it? Like, that surrender is the hardest part. So that's what in our world we call crone energy. So it's the energy of the archetype of the crone. And so, of course, it's difficult because it takes wisdom, right? It takes wisdom to know, to embody it, and to engage it.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that is where it is so it's such a beautiful thing to then, go through those steps of like naming what's going on. Because if you don't have the awareness to kind of stop and scan out, and oh, I think you mentioned this in your newsletter of seeing yourself from
Mm,
like looking down at you. And I think that's such a beautiful kind of visual to just kind of like scan out from the moment, you know, just taking a few breaths and just like taking that perspective to look down at what's happening. Um, because if you don't, then there's nothing to even let go of because you haven't named, like, and so just taking those moments, those pauses, those breaths, and those moments to check in with ourselves. That's just so huge. It's such a thing that I think, makes such an impact in the way that we then move through the rest of a situation or an experience. But just allowing ourselves to slow down and pause and check in
mm,
can be
mhm.
powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's essential. It's absolutely essential. Without that, you're just kind of wrapped up in the energy of the thing and it's amplifying, right? Like it's louder and it's more invasive and it's amplifying. And so without an ability to slow down internally, we get caught in the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so, yeah, if you could maybe expand a little bit more on, just the workshop that you have coming up November 27th. And it's called Staying Centered in the Holiday Season. And just telling us a little bit more about that workshop and who it is really for. Um, that would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I have monthly workshops and I choose themes that I believe are impactful in women's lives. And so I thought with the holidays coming up, what do women tend to not prioritize? Well, it's themselves. And so I thought, okay, the reason we're doing that is because we're pulled in 1,000 different directions. So, what if there was a space where you can come and you can learn in real time for yourself how to stay inside your body when the inevitable is going to happen, right? So, being with family for many of us is inevitable. And it's also a choice. So, how do you make that a choice? So, I created this workshop specifically for women who feel pulled in all the different directions, but don't want to be pulled in all the different directions. So they want to find a way to stay inward and, you know, do this process, live this process so that they can actually stay centered. Because the presupposition is if you're centered, then you have a much more fun time. So I I want people to have a better time with their family. I want people to create meaningful relationships with their families and the people that they care about. I want people to be, to love what they're creating with their loved ones and that demands that they change their internal state. That's a non-negotiable. So this is a taste of how to do that and there's, live coaching. So you and I have talked about before how we have similar intentions and our way of going about it is different, right? So my way is poking a little bit and depending on if you want a lot of bit, to actually get to, okay, so here's what you're saying, but what's underneath that, right? And then, okay, well, here's what you're saying here, but what's underneath that? And so we go deeper and deeper, as long as it remains safe for people and as long as it remains something that they want to continue to explore. Uh, so yeah, that's essentially the workshop, and I think it's going to be pretty epic. I made it for only 10 people, and I think I have 4 spots left. So see how it goes.
That's so
Yeah.
yeah. I know, I love that because that really is the way to I mean, when we really wanna create that lasting change, to do the work of what's underneath that, what's underneath that, what's underneath that, and that really does take a container, like you said, of safety to be able to really set time to do that with yourself and with the company of other people, um, in a way where, yeah, you really are. You're unpacking layers and layers and layers, which we all have, you know? Um, and yeah, and what I love about doing some of those things is that, it's individual work, but it's also so important that we have people to do that together with and that
Mhm.
guides, like you have been and things to follow and things to kind of like lean on to guide us through um, those moments where we're unpacking layers, layers and years,
Yeah.
chips and things like that. So yeah,
We can do this alone. I believe that we can. Our bodies are designed to do it. And I think it's really difficult to do it alone because there's a lot of chatter and there's a lot of story and there's a lot of shoulds and there's a lot of I don't understands and there's a lot of that stuff that goes on that without somebody that you trust, that you feel safe with and all that sort of stuff, because without safety, you've got nothing. But without somebody that can guide and direct you to notice things differently, it's very, very difficult. Like it's very, very difficult. It's possible, but it's very difficult. And the well systems body of knowledge is actually designed to be self-directed. So it's designed for example, if you listen to the Decloaking and Living Authentically audio files, you would have everything you need, really, to actually live this process. But people get caught up. People get caught up in their own stories, they get caught up in everything, and, I was, in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous for about 2 years, and one of the first things that they say is change your friends, right? So if you no longer want to do the familiar thing, you have to change your friends. Well, sure, but some of us have husbands and children and mothers and sisters and fathers, right? So like, and we don't necessarily want to drop everybody, but we do want to learn how do we engage with these people differently to map to our own intention. So there's a lot to unpack there and you can do it alone, but it's just not really a lot of fun either. So community is much nicer. It's much, much nicer.
it's so cool. And that's another reason I think that I'm just, so on fire about hosting women's circles and having women come together because we just need that place where we have other women or just people in our life who are also committed to themselves and prioritizing
Mhm.
and a place where we're all doing maybe our own different work, but it's a place where we're coming together and we're all inspired to keep going, to keep on the path to self-awareness and knowing that you're not alone just feels so good in the sense that we're so human. Like it's so okay, It's so okay that there are things that you're working through or growing in, and and just to have that space where you can inspire each other. Um, that that tuning inward and listening to yourself is reinforced by the other people in your circle of yeah.
I love that having an example of other women prioritizing themselves.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
that right there is like is massive, massive, massive because so many women simply just don't give themselves permission to prioritize themselves. We have labels for that, right? Like we call that selfish, and that's a bad thing. So we don't do that, right? And when you're in a group of women that are just unapologetically
Mhm.
there for the purposes of I'm reclaiming this territory, right? This body, this mind, my life, it's mine. I reclaim it for myself. When you're in the presence of that energy, you can't help but want to play, right? You want to get involved.
Yeah.
So I hear you.
Yeah, I know, I love that. There somebody, today said that there's a difference between being self-centered and being centered in self, and I was like,
Hmm.
"I love that. I love that." Because, yeah, I think we so often are like, "Oh, no, I'm just being selfish," or, "Ugh, whatever," and it's like, "No, that's the best thing that you could do."
Yes. And not just for you, right? It's like it has an impact on your children. It has an impact intergenerationally. So when you know about timeline therapy, for example, in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, what happens is in the moment that you're in, you actually heal because we're quantum. You heal the past as you're healing yourself in the now, and you heal the future as you're healing yourself in the now. So the now is so essential. Like I must take responsibility for my life. It's a sacred act, right? It's like it's a sacred thing to do. And it's not just for me, although for me that would be enough. But it's not just for me, it's also for the intergenerational lineage of women that did not have the opportunity to do this. And women coming in the future, or, like my son, for example, his future depends on my well being,
Mhm.
right? Because if I'm not present for him, then I'm absent.
Right.
There's consequences to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's honoring. It's honoring
Mhm.
yourself, honoring the moment, honoring the people that you are in relationship with, you know?
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
so beautiful. Um, Stella, can we open this up for questions on
Sure,
subject?
absolutely. Yeah.
How do we do that? I
I
guess
think people can send in the chat, people can text if they have a question, which I'd be happy to have that be part of this. Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, so if anyone live has a question or would like to say anything in the chat, like feel free. Um, and then yeah, and also just another shout out too, if you're interested in joining Stella's workshop, that's the 27th. And so she'll dive deeper. You said you only have a few more spots, like 3 more spots left or something like that.
For you at this point in time. I think so. Yeah.
Yay! Um, so yeah, and then I also kind of want to tag along with I took the workshop, the pain as portal. And I just love this idea of changing these seemingly negative ideas or concepts and just how you and the Well Systems Institute just transforms it into something that's so beautiful. So, it's like a trigger, it's transformed into information and an invitation, and like pain, like literal pain in the body is transformed into this like portal of information and guidance and your body trying to tell you something, trying to get your attention. Um, anyway, I just think that those are such beautiful things. And yeah,
So imagine a world where people live like that.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine a world where you didn't think you're defective because you're responding to something as annoying as technology not working out,
Right.
you know? Like imagine you think there's something wrong with you for responding. It's such a bizarre thing, and in our culture we've turned everything upside down and inside out and then twisted it again to make sure that nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people think that they're defective, and it's like, no, no, you're not defective. There's a lot that's going on that you're paying attention to and you're more sensitive to than other people, potentially. And that's a good thing. That's your superpower.
Yeah.
So how do you honor that superpower?
Yeah. Yeah. I I also was um it's kind of along those same lines of just recognizing that your emotions are natural human responses to your environment or life. And I read that in let's see. Oh, it's called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. And I've been reading it. I've slowly been reading it because it's so good. And she talks about how, anxiety, depression, this is not something that's wrong with you. You're not defective for having feeling anxious or feeling depressed. Like these are normal human responses to life. These are unprocessed emotions and thoughts that need to be unpacked. And I just think that that is such a beautiful way of looking at life and our bodies and having a relationship with ourselves as we navigate through our experiences. And you talked about that too on in your workshop as well. So, yeah.
You know, oh my God, I had a thought and I went blank.
Ah,
I love when this happens. It's just so, I have so much right there,
yeah.
and then off it goes.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. But yeah, maybe along the lines of just natural human responses.
All right, so let's talk about emotions. And let's
But
talk about a common one that women experience. So, anxiety is one of the ones that I think something like 40% of women, um, 19 to 29 or 39, something, I can't remember the exact stats from Stats Can, but 40% of women experience some sort of mental distress, and particularly at that age group. So it's a very sensitive age group because it's a whole bunch of worlds colliding, right? Like people are leaving the nest, people are trying to figure out their life on their own. They don't really know what's real, what isn't, how to navigate all of this. So there's a lot of confusion during that time. And from where I'm standing and my experience of anxiety, so I'll use myself as an example. And tens of women who come in with anxiety. Like that's such a common state for women. And in my world, there's intelligence to what's showing up. So if anxiety is present, just like if a trigger is present, that means that there's an avoidance of a truth that's actually also present. Because anxiety is here to get your attention, to pay attention to things that you would not have been willing to pay attention to. So for myself, when I was having severe anxiety and panic attacks and I was medicated on all the PAMs and etc., at that time, I was in an abusive relationship. I was using recreational drugs. I felt immense pressure to succeed at school. I felt immense pressure to provide financially because I was dating a bum. I felt immense pressure to make that relationship that clearly wasn't working work, right? And so that manifested over time in this thing that was labeled anxiety. Now, I've seen counselors, therapists, um, anger management people. I've seen doctors, and nobody ever said to me, Stella, you know you're living with an asshole, right? You know this is an abusive relationship, right? You know, there are things in your life, those things that you're paying attention to. Like at that time, it was a lot of how capitalist society functions. It was incredibly difficult for me. Like, I didn't understand how in the world is this possible? Like, how can we feed this beast that's actually depleting us in every possible way? So, all of that made sense. And I didn't know how to deal with that internally. So I manifested this thing called anxiety. And then to quiet that thing called anxiety, I started using drugs. And to quiet that thing that I started using those drugs, I got more drugs, but legal ones, you know? So there was this like mix of all these things that resulted in me completely depleted, completely unable to function, totally convinced that there's something wrong with me. Enter, all the diagnoses that I'm not going to list, but every woman would have experienced, every woman. So it's like, what if somebody told me, hey, stop, stop. You're an intelligent, capable, resourceful woman. Let's like take a pause here and, as you said, zoom out and look at life for what it is, right? Like, look at the truth of what you're living and notice that your anxiety is actually an intelligent response to all the crazy that you're trying to make sane. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. So there's women that are living with husbands that they despise. There's women that have jobs that they despise. There's women that have all these life circumstances that don't align with who they know they are and who they know they're capable of becoming. And so instead of dealing with that reality, they go into this like panic, anxiety, etc. And they focus on that because they don't really want to deal with a shitty husband, right? Like they don't really want to deal with the consequences of what it might be to leave their job or whatever it happens to be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so true that, when we can stop for just a little minute and scan out
Mm.
and just also remind ourselves like, oh yeah, I can befriend my body or like I can befriend my mind, make peace with this thing that isn't trying to like hurt me or, like the pain isn't trying to like harm me in some way or something. But it's like, no, this is actually trying to invite me into alignment with who I really am. It's like trying to tell me, like, I want you to live your best life, you know? And I have the information of even how to get there if you would just like come with me and trust me and pay attention to me and listen to me. Um, I think that's yeah, like, it's so incredible. Okay, wait, I have a quick question. So how did
Okay.
you moving from all of the like, you don't have to tell your whole backstory, but just, like, how did you get from the crazy to now where you are now?
Okay. So the abbreviated version,
Standard version, I obviously have to get that.
a decade of searching and a decade of trying everything from the conventional status quo stuff that everybody goes through, doctors, therapy, etc., all the way to not so conventional stuff, but also sort of conventional now, like yoga and breath work and all that sort of stuff. And then all the way to actually what some might call woo and kind of trying to find what is here that's real and what isn't. And so I discovered wall systems in a very critical moment where I was losing it. I had everything I had worked so hard for. I was in the middle of I had just started my work as a federal public servant, which is what I wanted to do. I have my master's degree in criminology and victimology. So I really wanted to help people. And I was getting high at work. I was lying to my husband or then boyfriend, now husband. It was just ugly. So no matter what I was trying, it was just so very ugly. And I was like, do or die, bitch. Like, this is it. And so somehow, because this is how it works, the universe provided me this stunning elderly woman, a beautiful crone that just talked to me for 2.5 hours. Like, we just talked and talked and talked, and she was showing me all these things about well systems, and I'm looking at her stuff, craniosacral and I was like, "None of what you have on there makes any sense to me." But I was so drawn to that table, and so we had a conversation, and then I started showing up to her monthly conversations, and my world just expanded because everything I had been learning about began to make sense in relationship to me, my uniqueness. nervous system, my unique experience, my unique, um, well, experience. And so it was really, it was just spectacular. And then from there, it was game over because I do different things still. I still try, but when I have, and I'm not kidding, Maggie, like when I have a complete framework for how my mind, body, spirit connection actually works, and I pay attention to that and I know which lens to look at it from, it's like I own myself, my mind, and my body. Right? I know how to be here, how to be present, and how to stay connected. And there's a lot of stuff. There's still a lot of stuff and a lot of voices. Like there's a lot of voices. So how do you differentiate what voice is what? And what do you do with that voice? Right? What do you do when all those voices show up and they're competing?
Mm.
So I've discovered how to stay in all of that and how to stay rooted and grounded without losing myself too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's give yourself permission for a little bit, but not too much.
A little bit crazy. Yeah. Right. But know, I always think of that, like, I think that there's so many conditions in life. There's so many, you know, desires and things we want and all of this, but it always, I mean, especially for me, I just really feel like feeling good in myself, feeling clear, grounded, like really in a place where you feel like you can navigate all the changing conditions and things of life. But when you can know yourself
Mm.
and you have a roadmap of how to get back to that center or that place of, I don't know, just peace or wisdom inside yourself. I mean, that's what we all want, you know? And gosh,
I used to think that we all want that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't know if everybody does.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Hmm. So I was having a little chat with my son today. So he's 5. And we're talking about the infinity that I am.
Mm,
And because he's asking me about when I look up at the stars, does that mean looking at infinity? And I said, in a way, yes.
yeah.
And so we dove into a conversation about what he is, right? And the illusion of the body. Now he's 5, so I don't know what he's hearing. I don't know what he's taking in, but he understands, at least on some level, that there's a life force that animates the body, and the body is a device.
Mm.
And we wear this body in order to have an experience on this planet. And so the question becomes, what experience do you want to have?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Mm, mhm, mhm.
And some people want to play mind games,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Some people want to rule the world. And some people want to just live their most authentic, meaningful, congruent life. Those are the women I'm speaking to.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, those are the women you're speaking to.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so true, you said it right there. I mean, we we all have a choice, and it's really up to us how to
Mhm.
live it. And, yeah, yeah, it's really it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So that notion of it's up to me how I live my life is very challenging for women
Oh, yeah, yeah.
uh, because they don't get to be victims, right? In that, you can no longer be a victim in your own life. Things don't happen to you.
Mm,
You become an active protagonist, if you will, in the creation of your own story. So that means you take ownership,
yeah,
right? You name the thing,
yeah. Which
you claim it.
right, which is both wonderful and terrifying. It's both, you know? But it is so wonderful to know, yeah, I always have a choice, and I think we are very communal in the sense that, like, women, like you had mentioned, we look, um, outside of ourselves, like, we look at the people in our lives, like, our life, are we making sure that they're doing okay? Are they getting what they need? And that has served us as, we've evolved, but it can sometimes also be to our detriment in the sense that it's then hard for us to look inward because we're so focused. Oh, is everyone else okay? Is everyone else doing well? And it can be so easy then to lose touch with what do I need? You know,
Mm,
what do I want? What are, where is, um, I, where's my power in all of this? And am I in tune with it and in touch with my inner guidance? Um,
mhm.
so yeah, yeah,
So, one thing that I've discovered in the process of now working with tens of women around this
uh,
is that when we're doing that very you could do that same thing. You can still look outside of you and take care of people. That's what I did this weekend. But the difference is, what's the undercurrent that's driving that
mhm,
desire or potentially compulsion, right? So most women are doing that because they think that that's their value,
mhm,
right? They think that if I'm giving, if I'm caring, if I'm taking care of everybody, if I'm making sure everything's perfect, then I'm valuable to them, right? Then they're not going to abandon me. I think that's a big one for these kinds of women, myself included, right? Because we know what it's like to have been abandoned.
mhm,
So we create circumstances to make damn sure that that's never going to happen again. And that means over giving. But what we're not noticing is that we're depleting ourselves. And you
mm,
can't give from an empty cup. You just can't. So the energy that we bring to this is so important. When it's a fear-based energy, you're going to deplete yourself and nobody's ever going to be happy. It's never going to be good enough. There's always going to be more that you could do. People are always going to demand more of you. It's like it's never ends. But when you bring the energy of what's meaningful to me, what matters to me. Never mind what was important to my mother and what's important, to people here, but what's meaningful to me in this interaction. Are you still there? Mm. Okay. Well, I have no idea if I'm live or not, but if I am, I think Maggie's phone shut off. So, okay, she's asking me to thank everyone. Oh my goodness, she can't get her phone back on. So I have no idea if I'm live. But if I am, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions at all, if you have any comments, concerns, whatever it happens to be, feel free to share them with me or with Maggie. I had a ton of fun having this exploration, including the tech gremlins. I feel like there's something pretty essential about this having happened. So, and I don't know, I haven't unpacked it yet. So, anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If this was as fun for you as it was for me, I would love to hear from you. And I guess I'm just gonna hang up. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how to do that. I don't see anything. So have a spectacular evening.